Welcome to the Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon.
And I'm Stuart.
We're both property people running our own businesses. This podcast is just us chatting, as we often do, about anything and everything property. So I know there are a number of updates and bits and pieces that we thought we might cover on this episode, Stuart. But first of all, I thought I'd put the proposition to you that HMOs are dead, seeing as these are some of the headlines that I've been reading recently. And of course, you're very much in the HMO and indeed student HMO market. So what do you think of these?
Well, I won't be burying my HMOs just yet. I think we've got a way to go, primarily because people still need somewhere to live, and there's still a market to serve, and all the time there is a customer to serve. Then, I think, these products will exist. I mean, I know obviously we're being slightly flippant about it, but clearly, I don't know what the numbers are, and it would be good for us to actually review that in terms of people living in, house shares stroke HMOs.
Yeah, if you took everyone out of HMOs and put them all in individual flats, even studio flats, there's just nowhere near enough accommodation. It couldn't work at all.
Mm.
But even within the HMO world, there are quite different setups around. So you get HMOs where everybody enters the house as an individual. They rent a room and they don't really know their housemates before they start that process. There are also HMOs that might still be rented in that fashion, or they might be rented on a single AST, where the people going into it together are going in as a group, and they're a unit sort of in advance of taking on the property. And I think those are very different situations for considering whether the HMO is dead or not.
Mm.
And I think in the student market, you actually see both of those, don't you? Those scenarios across your properties.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, because some, if you're getting second and third years, you might get groups of people that have obviously already met and become friends in the first year. I mean, obviously our HMO's dead is obviously a really nice clickbaity headline for magazines, online people to use, which hopefully gets you to read it. I think we're going to use it for this episode, so hopefully some people will catch on to it for that as well. But yeah, as you've said, I mean, my first question is, okay, then where do they go? For me, it's more about making sure that the environments we're in are now adapted to suit the times we're living, i.e., do we have access to hand sanitizers? Are things getting cleaned? My properties are all cleaned monthly anyway, as part of the service that we offer. So I know that's happening.
It's communal areas.
That's just communal areas. But of course, that still would meet with, guidelines. If you're only going back to your own room and you're not inviting more than one stranger into your room, then of course it's incumbent on them. So the question is, do we do that more often? That's an option. Do we do the cleaning more often? But I think that there's very much still a market for it. And, the next point you mentioned was around, universities themselves, and in terms of, what will happen there. So I guess that was another element of the argument, was it, in terms of are HMOs dead, in terms of student numbers?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen some headlines recently where universities have stated that next year all of their lectures will be online. Of course, these headlines are again chosen to be a bit sensationalist, and when you dig into the articles, the lectures might be online, but many of the other teaching facilities, whether that's practicals or smaller classes or one-to-one tutorials, are actually all still going to happen in person. So it's not that people can suddenly start attending university from the other side of the world. They're still actually will need to be physically close. It's just that they'll be spending more time away from the campus and in their homes.
Yeah. And the thing for me about this is, and I've had a few conversations, obviously, with local letting agents around the university, but I always try and think of this from the business perspective. Now, if if that were to happen where everything went online, for example, what would happen to universities? Are universities going to allow that to happen? I don't think so. Currently, that's not to say that couldn't change, and that's not to say there isn't an opportunity for a mixed model. But the argument.
So I was going to say, you get, is it the Open University that I think is mostly remote? But people who I've known who have done Open University courses, they still have physical meetings where they meet up with their course tutor and go over things and stuff. So even that, which is a university designed to mostly be remote, isn't 100% remote.
And that was exactly the example I was going to use, Simon. So you've stolen my thunder there.
My apologies.
No, it's good. It just shows, in terms of the thinking. But equally, the students are saying, well, if we wanted an Open University course that was a greater percentage of online, then that's exactly what we'd do. And I think I personally haven't been to university. My wife's been to university, but obviously I know from working with it as well. And, one of the aspects that I think is very appealing about university is the change in environment, is the opportunity of meeting new people. Yes, you can do that online, but again, it might change and different generations might see it differently, but there's still nothing, as far as we're concerned, that can replace the actual meeting of people. And what we're hearing from students, and as I mentioned to you before we started recording, that we're seeing applications, I think nationwide, increase by about 20% for student applications because of the uncertainty in the market. So where people are uncertain, they're saying, well, actually, we'll either, if they weren't considering university before, they are now considering that, rather than going into a job market which might not be the best in its best condition. And secondly, people now choosing postgrad courses where they were going to leave. And, and I've heard that anecdotally and I've heard that officially as well, where I mentioned this to someone recently and I said, oh yeah, well, my daughter's just decided to do a postgrad. And so
it's all where people were expecting to go into jobs, and now they're a lot less certain about those jobs existing or being available, and hence they're taking alternative actions.
Yeah, so the market is there, and then what we're hearing anecdotally from the students, from the people that I'm speaking with, and these people have thousands of rooms that they're managing, is if they wanted to do a greater online course, then they'd go and choose that. Birkbeck University do that, for example, but they wouldn't choose to go to choose a university anywhere in the country and then not go to that part of the country. I think there's an acceptance, that things might change, but the feeling is, certainly from the conversations I've had, is that the students want to go to the universities. So for me, that gives me a lot of confidence and a lot of hope.
Yeah, you've also got some rooms targeted at young professionals, I think, and something I've wondered that might actually help HMOs is where you've got lots of young professionals living in one-bed flats or studios or whatever, and they've now been in lockdown for a couple of months. That's actually quite a lonely existence, especially if you don't have a garden even that you can go into. Whereas if you're in a shared accommodation, you'd have other people still within your bubble of lockdown that you would have human contact with. And even if you didn't know them before, you'd get to know them pretty quickly, I'm sure. And probably that would be part of a house rather than a flat, although of course you do get some HMO flats, but probably a house. So you're more likely to have a garden and outside space as well in that environment. So I think young professional HMOs, especially where people can enter them as a group where they already know their friends and bring them along with them, I think that could actually be a growing market rather than a shrinking one.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I don't think, the need is going to dissipate because of what's happening now. Yeah, as you started off by saying, that there is a need for housing. There's a need for generally younger people. In the properties I've got, we're also seeing older people that need properties that can't necessarily afford to buy that first flat, to buy that studio flat. They're going to need somewhere to go. And, coupled with the fact that, people are looking for connections. And that's something we're thinking about in our properties, is how we help, provide a catalyst for for people living in the properties to meet with each other, and that is primarily by making sure that the communal spaces are good communal spaces. And in the properties I've got, they're still meeting, and I know that they've probably seen that as a real positive, that they can go into the communal space, watch TV with a couple of other of the house members, have a chat, and and put the world to rights just as the rest of us do. I don't know about you, but when I spend a lot of my day on Zoom or Teams or on calls, when it comes to catching up with friends at 7, 8 o'clock, where I have to put the headphones on again to go on a Zoom call, you're just like, we're kind of done with it. So yeah, in a way, you'd kind of like just to do the physical element where you could. So I agree with you, obviously.
Yeah.
But the point being that in times like these, people are looking for more social connection, not less. So whilst we do have to make sure the environments are created and well managed to suit the society that we're living in, equally people still need connection, however that happens, and we just have to make sure that happens in a safe way.
Yeah, I've heard stories online about HMOs made up of people who weren't friends before, didn't know each other so much, where one of those is a key worker, and they're still having to go out of the property and work perhaps in higher risk areas. And other members of that HMO perhaps fall into the higher risk categories themselves, being more vulnerable to the virus. And I think that must be a very difficult situation. And that can certainly be a sort of bad mark against HMOs, I think. I don't know how prevalent that situation is compared to the other one, where people are actually just very glad of the human contact.
Yeah, it's like most things, we've still got high-rise building apartment blocks. We've still got, many more purpose-built houses with multiple units in them. And I guess, you can stay within a unit, but then in the communal areas, you're still going to get a higher footfall of people. So, my feeling is that, we'll have to change the way we approach it and think a lot more about the hygiene elements of it, and quite rightly so. But that they are, these properties, HMOs, purpose-built student flats, studio flats, they're all serving a need. They wouldn't, if they weren't serving a need, there wouldn't be people filling these rooms. Hopefully, for me, like most things, and we've spoken about this in the past, but I'm using this time to set up and make the properties much, much better. So I'm trying to make a much more design-led approach. And yes, we'll think about how we make sure the environment are hygienic and safe, as well as good places to be. And the other side of that coin is that in these situations, if people aren't happy, in the less well done properties, those that aren't looked after, hopefully those will be the ones that are left behind. That's the hope, because we're in this game to hopefully make people's lives better.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the HMO market evolves, and indeed the blocks of flats and things like that. And you mentioned there are obviously communal areas there as well. You've got corridors, stairs, lifts, whatever it might be, that is shared space. Effectively, you might not be in that shared space for as long as if you're sharing a lounge or a kitchen, but you still have to walk through that, and often the corridors might be quite small, and you may have to pass people in those areas and things. So, exactly. The concerns may well extend beyond HMOs. In fact, HMOs are probably better placed to handle that, because it's a smaller number of people in any given wider unit, and you're more likely to know those people and be able to sort of chat to them in a friendly way and work things out.
Yeah, and you can manage it. I mean, on this topic, I had to go and see a property last week where we've had some difficulties with tenants, because they said they were leaving the property, and basically they hadn't. So I said, essentially there was supposed to be one person left, and the reason this is kind of related is because when I went to the property, not only were there more people there than there should have been, but the property was in an absolute state. I mean, it was it was really horrible. And it's an old story that
I think you mentioned this one before, and your agent had been helping you out. They'd been visiting and working things out. Had they not reported this to you, or were you expecting it to be in this bad state when you got there?
Well, no, I'd been there before, and it wasn't in a great state, but it was kind of what I'd expect from a multi-student HMO, to be honest. Just bits of rubbish on the floor here and there, and whatever it was. But the most frustrating thing about this was that the agent had told. So even though the guys shouldn't have been there, the agent told the people there that I was coming, gave them 24 hours notice, and you couldn't see the kitchen floor. It was covered in so much stuff. There was like gravy. I don't know what, all over the kitchen wall. There was something squashed into the wall that once was alive that no one had decided. You couldn't see the kitchen surface. I mean, it looked like someone had opened a big bag of flour and just thrown it up in the air and let that come down. I mean, it was like, for example, there was just a slice of bread in front of the TV. It was, it was one of the poorest conditions I've ever been to one of my properties in. But
you just have to ask why.
Yeah.
Why?
But the thing that really, really angered me on this occasion was the fact that they knew I was coming. So they had been told quite explicitly, the landlord's coming within 24 hours, and had said, I wore my gloves, I wore my mask, and, they were upstairs while I was downstairs. But when I saw the state of the property, I was utterly disgusted, to be honest. And let's just say that I put that in no uncertain terms to the tenants that were there, that by the way, weren't currently paying either. So, to compound all of the issues, and for me, it wasn't, I didn't mention pay, but it was like, these people aren't even paying now. And, that my point to them was about respect. And, and the reason I've mentioned this, with what we were talking about, because it really gave me a sort of big shot in the arm to say, this is not what I got into this game for. And, I've got a property in the same street where we've refurbished it to a very high standard. We've, we really looked after the property. And because we did that, and because we looked after the property, the tenants equally look after the property. Even to the point where they said, look, this bin's getting too small. Can we have another bin? They then said, could we have another Hoover? And all of which just led me to believe, they're looking after the property. And I think this sort of brings me back around to this property that I went to. It's in a nice condition. I'd only refurbished it 2 years ago. It's not a bad property. It's actually, it's not the most interesting property, but it's very clean. It's very nice. But, what all of us do this for is not, yes, we're looking to generate income for ourselves, but by doing that, by providing housing for people that care. And I think, what we were talking about just makes me think, we have to care about the properties and the people in it first. But then if those people aren't caring about it, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah, when people can't even manage to keep up with basic cleanliness in their own home, you've got to worry about, or it is hard to consider that they might be worrying about anything wider than that, isn't it? So they're clearly not going to be concerned about viruses and possible infection routes if they can't even pick up bits of random bread. I mean,
well, exactly. If you can't, and again, if you can't look after the hygiene for yourself, the expectation is, how hygienic are they going to be in the outside world themselves? That's my worry. I mean, as the old joke goes, it became the sort of house where I had to wipe my feet on the way out as opposed on the way in.
Oh yeah, they're the best kind. They are.
Which is never a house I wanted to own. So,
well, I'm sure you'll fix it all up and make it spick and span again once they've moved out. Are they due to finish their tenancy at the end of the academic year?
Yes, they are. They shall be leaving very soon. I believe they have left. I've got to go back down and visit there now with it in the next. Well, I will have visited by the time this airs, but I'm going back down there to see for my own eyes what's happened. And then once the last one's left, we are going to refurb it to a high standard. And the obviously the prerequisite will be that they look after the property when they move in.
Are you going to keep it a student house, or are you going to refocus that one?
The current plan is to refocus, which is probably another topic for another show. But so
it could be a bigger one, that one. And we're coming up to time now, so I wonder if perhaps we should do some other quick updates that you've got. You've had some progress with refinancing and with loans, I believe.
Yeah,
recap on your current situation on those.
Yeah, well, we spoke about the CBILS, which what I now will call the CBILS debacle, where I put the application in. I did get an email about 2 weeks later to say we need to call you just to finalise something. That call never came. I sent a couple of emails. It's none of which have been responded to, and then following our conversation, actually, Simon, on one of our previous episodes where you mentioned the bounce back, it kind of just set me thinking, well, rather than just sitting and waiting, which is not my forte, to be honest, as you know, I'm probably more of a doer and look back afterwards. I thought, you know what can I've got nothing to lose just by filling out the bounce back loan forms. And unbelievably, I think within 3 working days, I mean, no one had contacted me. I just filled out the form, and within 3-4 working days, there was just money in my account. So that was,
sounds good.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, really. So, it's a bit of yin and yang. And the only frustration I've got, and I don't want to get political on this, is the issue regarding the CBILS, which is there was clearly a reticence from banks, and this bank in particular of mine, which we bailed out in 2008, that the reticence was to make those loans, because obviously they tried personal guarantees at first, and we rebelled at that. But of course, for the bounce back, the government's there is 0% interest because the government's backing it for the first 12 months, and I think cover it thereafter. So
they're underwriting it for the whole term, aren't they? So the banks are basically taking zero risk.
Exactly, and that's the word, was the underwriting, and that's my frustration, is that only once the banks were told actually there is zero risk to you have they unlocked that capital. And I'm not going to be churlish, because I'm now a recipient of those funds and I'm very grateful, but I find it very frustrating that the banks had to, when the shoe was on the other foot, and the taxpayer had to step in, they did. Whereas on this case, when the taxpayer needs support, they've been more hesitant to do that. But anyway, so that came in. So that's been really positive for just making sure that we can plan for the next 5 or 6 months as a business and still be here. So for us, it's about survival
always
first.
Reassuring.
Yeah. Just existing is the first thing. And then, as of this morning, on today's recording, as we're recording, I've found that 3 refinances that I'm doing have all come through. So actually, 2 of them, I've had the 2 offers come through. I'm just waiting for the 3rd, which should happen in the next 2 or 3 working days, which means the refinancing will happen. So we can keep moving forward.
Did you get the rates and the loan to values and everything else that you were hoping for on those? Nothing was restricted at all, was it?
No, well, the valuations were a little bit lower, but that was, we knew that a while ago when we originally did the decision in principles. We had the valuations just before lockdown, actually. So we've just been waiting for lockdown to lift before they've started progressing.
Okay, so that wasn't a particular COVID down valuation or anything. It was
No.
It was just generally you were being too optimistic with your valuations.
Yeah. Well, more optimistic than the valuer and the bank, as I think most of us are.
Yep.
So that's good. So it just means we can start progressing once that happens.
Cool, fantastic. I think that does take us out of time. So if you're enjoying listening to this, I think my one ask for this week is that you share this with one other person who you think might like to listen to it as well. And Stuart and I would be very grateful if you could. And more information and all the show notes can be found at thebusinessofproperty.com.